Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to start a new theme this week. It's actually a two-parter theme, so we're going to take up all of this week and all of next week to look through this, as we'll be looking at 10 songs rather than 5. This one is covers. We're going to look at an original song, and then the day following we'll look at a band who has covered it, hopefully where the cover is different or unique in some sort of way. Trying to move away from any sort of one-to-one cover that's pretty much identical but just done by a different group of people. Today we're going to be looking at Radiohead's Packed Like Sardines in a Crushed Tin. Tin Box. Sorry, there was more to that title. This comes off of their Amnesiac album. Tomorrow we're going to look at the Punch Brothers cover this, who are a bit of a bluegrass group, progressive bluegrass group. So that'll be an interesting comparison. I haven't even heard this yet, but I know that Radiohead is very different from Punch Brothers, just from what I've heard in the past. All right, let's dive into this. Check out what Radiohead did with this track. It's a very trebly percussion instrument. It sounds like there's almost a high frequency buzz just constantly on here. I don't think it's on. I think it's in the song. All of those bass notes just sort of flowing together, very little space between the pitch changes. Ooh, that's a fun hot hit. Modulation on the vocals, on that last syllable. It feels like a powder keg, both in the harmonic movement, but also in just how compressed all of these sounds are. simmered out. How anticlimactic. I don't I don't know how to feel about this one yet. I think this one's going to take a little bit of time. I guess let's start with more objective qualities about this and see if that takes me anywhere. All right. The song kicks off with a very trebly percussion, something that I think is taking the place generally of the snare's role, which is to come in every other beat and create this consistent pulse for the song. It's very resonant, got a lot of reverb to it, but it almost sounds like, I don't know, it's metallic for sure. Has a metallic timbre to it, but again, it's also really high in pitch. I don't know, man. I well, given the rest of this song that I think is generally electronic as well, this is probably not a real instrument. But if anyone has insight into that, maybe you've heard an interview about how they created the sounds on this track. Maybe you have a link to Radiohead discussing how they created the songs on this track. Let me know. Send that to me. I'm really curious. It is a it's a peculiar sound, one that I think ultimately became a bit annoying to me. It's a repeated tone for pretty much the entirety of the song that really, just cuts into the limelight of the track, and it kind of got on my nerve, the hyper repetition of this very difficult to ignore sound. Um, but it is interesting. You don't hear too many songs with a snare roll like that. Not a roll, but like ROLE, something taking the role that the snare typically has in a rock track. This is accompanied by a bass that has no attack. Again, I don't know if this is a bass guitar or if this is strictly electronic, but notes just become the next pitch. There isn't really a clean cut where one note ends and another begins. But it isn't really a fluid movement between the pitches either. Usually, if you're going to change pitches, and we'll take a guitar, right? A bass guitar. Why not? That seems like a good instrument to look at here. For an example, if you wanted to smoothly move between two notes, you would slide. So you put your finger where it needs to be on the neck, you pluck the string so it vibrates, and then you move your finger to the next place. And you're going to get all the tones, all the pitches between your starting note and your ending note. The other way to do it would be to synchronize your picking hand and your moving hand and do them simultaneously. So you're not going to get the slide, you're going to go from one note to the next, but as your picking finger, or if you're using a pick, whatever, hits the string, it's actually going to stop the vibration for a moment before you pick it again and the vibration starts again. This also not only just creates this pocket of no sound, which is usually not really perceptible, but it does create usually a bit more of a punch. As your old note, the vibrations have begun to slow on the string, so the volume of the note has begun to diminish a little bit. And so there's a little bit of a punch back up in volume with this super tiny space between the notes. And this is what gives us the sound of attacking a note. It's what gives us the perceptible difference between two notes. You usually have one of those two. The slide into, in which you're going to hear all of the microtones between your pitches, or the sharp cut. Here we got neither. It feels fluid like a slide, but we don't get any of the tones in between. Pitches just become other pitches with a continued element of volume and frequency. It doesn't sound natural. Much like the snare drum here, or whatever that instrument is, I kind of want to ascribe a more acoustic element to it, but when I do that, my brain kind of breaks. This isn't an instrument that I'm aware of. It sounds like one. That hitting of the percussion instrument kind of sounds acoustic. There's nothing in it that distinctly sounds digital. It's just that the timbre itself feels foreign to me. And the same thing happens here. The way that these notes change or formed and everything else about it seems pretty normal. It's one little thing that makes the entire thing feel off. It took me a while to get into this song simply because the sounds they're using are uncanny in a sense. Close to what I expect, but very wrong in some minor elements of them that really throws the entire thing out of whack. What's actually happening here, though, just on paper, if you were to transcribe this to sheet music and give it to any percussion and like a lower end instrument, that's really not anything too wild here. It really is the sounds of these instruments that are playing these parts that give this song its distinct flavor and texture. From here, we begin to add in some vocal parts, and they kind of just line up with what the bass line is. We have this descending line, down, 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 down. That last one goes in a place I don't expect. It lands with a bit more finality to it, where the first three notes all have tension. But it isn't a resolution, it just isn't more tension. I find that to be a really interesting movement between that. It also reminds me of, I think it's a descending pattern in a Nine Inch Nails song. I can't think of what song it is. And it's close except for the final two notes. The third note is somewhat close to the Nine Inch Nails one, but the last one's totally different because it provides this hitting of a floor. Again, it feels like a free fall. And then you land, you're just not landing on anything you expect. It's not solid floor. The texture is a little weird. It's not tile or wood or grass. You don't know what it is, but at least it's solid. And that's kind of what that descending melody feels like to me. But beyond that, the vocals are sort of tired, withdrawn, just kind of slurring between these notes, low energy. It adds to the dreariness of it. I would not really call this a melancholic or sad song, but it is not positive. It's kind of an ambiguous negative emotion as far as I can tell. And a lot of that comes from the textures, how the vocals are delivered, the instrument sounds around it, everything feeling just a hair bit out of place. But when you look at the harmonies and the melodies, there's definitely a negative turn to most of it. There's also a really cool hocket that comes in about minute 1.5-ish, maybe two. We have two new percussion instruments coming in. Are they percussion instruments? I mean, it's all digital, probably, so I guess it's kind of a moot point. I don't think they change pitch, though. Anyways, they're highly focused on rhythmic ideas. And we have one idea going on over here that's quite a bit faster, and then we have a slower idea over here that primarily, maybe exclusively plays in between the notes on this side. So if this one's doing a specific rhythm and it has a gap in this point, that's where this instrument comes in and fills that gap. And so your attention ends up bouncing back and forth between the two, kind of focusing on this side because there's more of it. And then when there's a small break, a little rest, you're ping pong over this side as it fills that space in, and then you go back to this one as it's continuing its idea now. Two very distinct timbres. There's no way of confusing these for the same instrument. They are vastly different. And just a quick thing for those who are new here, a hocket is simply two or more instruments playing the same idea but taking turns playing it. So like I said, this one's going to play a couple of notes and then it'll get passed to this one to play, in this case, one note, back to this one to play a couple of notes, to that one to playing a one. When you listen to them together, it is one consistent idea, but the sounds of the instruments are going to be varied as you go through this melodic, or in this case, rhythmic device. I thought that was interesting. Also sort of unsettling though. The two instruments, again, are very diverse and they're pushed out to opposite sides. It is, as I mentioned, a ping-ponging of attention. It's very difficult to lean into and understand anything else that's going on because these instruments are loud, prominent in the mix. They're very ear-catching sounds and they're bouncing back and forth. It's really easy to just kind of get lost in the ping pong and forget about everything else that's happening in this moment. I think we're finally covered enough of what's going on here on the foundation to explore a core element I feel about this track. I had mentioned at the end that it felt like a powder keg. Between the harmony with all of these tense ideas, falling pattern here, granted, like I said, we do land on something a bit more stable, but it's not resolved. We never really get any true sense of harmonic resolution in here. All of the sounds to me are a bit uncanny, compressed, and just not what I expect, almost as if there is some sort of filter on an instrument I would be more familiar with that's retaining some of its sonic properties. If we just removed that filter or cranked it back up rather than removing this element, we'd actually get to hear the instrument as we expect to hear it. Again, I think this is all digital, but this is my perception of these sounds. Everything feels like it's half of what it should be. There is no resolution, there is no fullness, there is no completion. Everything is lacking in something. To me, it really felt like eventually this song, especially as we started to add more layers around minute 2.5 or so, I really thought the song was going to explode. We were going to fill in all of this missing space. It alludes to the space being filled in. I can kind of hear what these instruments, what these melodies, what these harmonies would sound like if they had their other half. We just not getting there. Eventually, of course, we will add that information back in. It will feel whole and complete again. But it doesn't. We do get a peak in the track, but it's a layering peak, a volume peak even, but it still feels incomplete. And then the final 40 seconds or so roll around and it's just kind of like the beginning again. Less layered, less dense, somber again. That rising energy just gone. I thought it was taking us somewhere and then it just disappeared. And this kind of takes me back to the beginning of this analysis segment when I said I don't know how to feel about this. I mean, maybe this is all what I'm supposed to feel. Incomplete, lost in an alien world. It's a song that ultimately, I think, played on some of my expectations of the sounds of music, the sounds of rock music, I think in particular. It sets up a lot of things I expect to hear in rock and then just doesn't deliver on it. but also maybe the idea of lacking resolution, of feeling lost, are integral to the song. And my experience with this track, while not necessarily being fun or enjoyable, is the intended experience. I think it's time to get a little bit more concrete direction on the themes of this track. Let's hit some lyrics on it and see what's going on there. Well, on the one hand, there's not a lot of lyrics, and it sort of opens itself up for interpretation by being more vague rather than being directed. In fact, I think that there's only 6 lines on this entire track that are unique. There's a lot of repetition on it. But on the other hand, I really like the first 2 lines of the opening stanza because it feels like a direct response to what I was just talking about, having expectations and having them not met. The song kicks off, after years of waiting, nothing came. And I really feel that about the music. Every bit of it feels ready to explode. I was expecting more, but the song is just what it is. There's nothing left. I can wait as long as I want. This song isn't becoming anything else. It's just what it is. Beyond that, though, like I mentioned, the lyrics are rather vague, and it can really open itself up for interpretation and application to pretty much anything you want to make of it. The first verse ends with, "As your life flashed before your eyes, you realize." The chorus kicks in, "I'm a reasonable man, get off my case." And I don't know how to interpret that in particular. We'll circle back to that though. Verse 2, "After years of waiting, nothing came. And you realize you're looking in the wrong place." Once again, I feel like the music relates to that. My expectations weren't resolved in this music because this music didn't have what I was expecting out of it. If I want a song that builds and grows into a climax, I gotta look elsewhere. This wasn't it. This is why I try, and I'm not perfect about this, but I try to, when I have these more subjective feelings about a song, and I say I didn't like it because this, or I was expecting this and they didn't deliver on it, I try to keep my tone neutral. I try not to express disappointment too often. I try not to make it a problem of the song. In fact, recently I've taken up the term skill issue usually as a way to ensure that people understand that when I'm disappointed with the track, it's usually because I'm not experiencing it properly, or I don't like the song, more so than that the song is objectively bad. And I think this is a really good phrase to sort of bring all of that together. This song didn't have what I was looking for. I was looking in the wrong place. It's a different way of phrasing it. It's not an issue with the song, it's an issue with me. I put my expectations somewhere. I was looking somewhere where obviously this wasn't going to happen. I need to search elsewhere. I need to do something rather than the song needs to change. But bringing this away from the music and just looking at the lyrics, again, this could represent anything, an expectation or a want of something that just isn't going to happen. Expecting people to be someone they're not, expecting a device to do something that it's not designed to do, expecting society to be something it doesn't want to. And that's all the lyrics, though. Nothing came after years of waiting. You were simply looking in the wrong place. I'm a reasonable man, though. Get off my case. And I don't really know how to interpret all of that. Again, the vague idea of you've wasted your time here, things were never going to go the way you expected, but what's up with being a reasonable man? Is this about the narrator having expectations placed on them that they were never going to fulfill? Again, though, it's so vague. It could relate to a lot of different ideas, even personal ideas. I mean, simply the idea of having expectations placed on you can be put into the context of so many different situations. It could be, parental expectations. It could be job expectations, friend expectations, the expected roles in a relationship. It could be about religious authority expecting something of you. Like, there's so many directions to take this. And I think that makes it very relatable. You hear these 6 sentences and you're like, dude, I feel that. The music feels like that. Of being in the wrong place, expecting something more, and it's not willing to give, or it can't give, or it just plain won't give. That's an interesting track. I think I'm intrigued about tomorrow. A lot of the identity of this track is in the sound of it. Like I said, once you put this stuff on paper and give it to another set of instruments, there's still elements there. But a lot of this is the timbre of it, the way the vocals sound, the way these instruments sound, how they present themselves to feel like other instruments with qualities shaved off. Something that feels a little lesser than and challenges my expectations of musical timbres. Punch Brothers, as far as I know, which we'll check out their cover tomorrow, is an acoustic bluegrass band. So that element's going to be removed. It's going to be a hyper focus on the composition and how well are they going to be able to achieve this? Or are they going to change it entirely and focus on something else to highlight in the music? Stick around, be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. We're going to check that out. Until next time, though, this wraps it up for today. Let me know your thoughts on this, though. Did you enjoy it? Did anything stand out to you? Is there anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have any answers to some of the questions I posed in this reaction? Let me know. Put all of that and any other thoughts you might have into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all 3 of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, as I said, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.